Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Power of Esports in the Classroom webinar with Micro K-12. We're joined here with Connor and Scott from HSEL and Spectrum. I'll let them give further into the introductions, but my name is Tanner Litchfield. I'm the esports specialist here at Micro K-12. And along with the introductions, I wanted to give a brief background on our esports or gaming experience. So for me, I've been a casual gamer since forever ago, but I'd say in middle school, I really started getting into it. I'd say Call of Duty has always been my go-to. I've not as serious as I was in middle school and high school, but I still love to play and get on while I can. So that's a little bit of background on me. And now I'm going to turn the time over to Connor.
Hey everyone, my name is Connor Alne. I more commonly go by Coach Alne online. I've been in esports since about 2013. I was originally a Call of Duty player as well. Competed for a while, got into college, and that's when sort of my professional esports career began. I started out by traveling the country hosting esports tournaments. We would host tournaments for a variety of different titles through multiple platforms. Ran those for a couple of years, ended up opening up a brick and mortar store that was an esports training facility where we allowed students to actually come in, get coaching, compete on a team, and really start to structure how esports was played. From there, I went on and was recruited to go collegiate. I started a college esports program here in Kansas at Ottawa University. We were one of the first programs that was founded around spectator esports. We built a 200-person spectator arena for esports, and I served as our first head coach and currently sit as the executive director of that program as we continue growing it and looking for our first championship this year. From there, I was the director of esports for the Varsity Esports Foundation. During my time there, we worked on scholarships and grants to allow high schools to start esports programs, particularly schools that were Title I or free and reduced. We helped pay for their league fees and kind of get more of those programs up and running, as well as started some education initiatives around doing esports training and certification. And then more recently, actually just the past couple of weeks, I joined the HSEL team, the High School Esports League, as a full-time content producer. So I've been making videos and education on esports for a long time now. And so moving over to HSEL is now my full-time job to make online content around education, awareness, and just making esports fun. So that's me. Scott, if you want to go.
Sounds good. What a great overview and a great background, Connor. That's awesome. My name is Scott Dorn. I've been with Spectrum Industries for 25 years. Actually, Spectrum's been in business for 52 and primarily serving the education technology market. Really just a casual gamer, been gaming since pre-Tecmo Bowl. So I'll try to avoid Call of Duty with these two guys. But if we want to play Tecmo Bowl, I'm going to take Bo Jackson and the Raiders, and we'll be happy to engage on the field then. But we're excited. Spectrum's been immersed in the esports category for quite some time and looking to help facilitate whatever introductions and advocacy we can on behalf of esports. Take it away, Tanner.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Scott and Connor. So a quick overview. We're going to go into why esports. I know you've heard a lot about that, but esports really is booming. It's starting to come more into education, and it's only going to keep growing. So you don't want to be late to the party. So Connor will be covering this, and then Scott will go ahead and take the esports further on the careers and the furniture side. And then after that, we're going to be doing our giveaway. And so we'll announce that winner live, and then we'll do the Q&A. And the giveaway, I didn't mention, is a gaming chair similar to the one I'm on. Not the same, but I'm just saying this is a gaming chair. And here's some more of our gaming equipment. To the left or right of me. I know these things mirror sometimes, so don't quote me on that. But now I'm going to open up a poll question. So this poll question, we want to gauge a little bit where our audience is at. So how familiar are you all with esports? I'm going to launch this now. And we'll just give 10 or so seconds for our audience to vote on this. And then I'll share the results so you can all see it. And we'll go from there. A few more seconds. Let's see. Looks like it stopped. Okay, let's launch. Share results. It looks like the most popular one was somewhat familiar with 4 votes. And then the next popular is not familiar at all. So this is good to know. So now I'm going to stop sharing these so it doesn't show up in your face. And I'm going to turn the time over to Connor, and Connor can give you a little bit more background on esports, a brief introduction for those who are not familiar with it.
Yeah, thanks, Tanner. Excited to be here and to talk to everyone. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I'm extremely passionate about K-12 esports as well as higher ed. So for you all to take time out of your day to be here and learn about it is awesome. So I'm just going to give a really quick overview of what esports is, as it looked like a decent amount of the audience just is not familiar with it at all. All you really need to know is esports is essentially competitive video game tournaments. So it's when a video game is structured into a tournament-like setting where you have very strict rules and guidelines, and you're competing against other real people to determine a winner and to earn a prize. That prize can be a pat on the back all the way up to millions of dollars. So that's essentially what the word esports is. So when you think about it, all esports are video games. Not all video games are esports. When we're talking about esports, we're not just talking about playing video games by yourself in the basement. We're talking about organized, structured competition around video games. So that's just a quick overview of what that word means. And I think in Q&A, we can dive in more if we need more background, but I think we're good there. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll kind of get into more of what I want to talk about, which is the benefit of adding esports into the K-12 school districts, into education, and ultimately in athletics. So a couple of the really big highlights when it comes to esports and the benefit of adding it into the classroom is, first and foremost, it creates opportunities. As teachers and educators, we're always looking to give our students the best opportunity at a future and the life that they want. And esports opens up a lot of opportunities for these kids. Last year, there was over $15 million awarded in scholarships for esports players to go to college. There was a handful of schools that were even offering full ride scholarships for esports, and that number is continuing to grow every single year. And it really just opens up the ability for these students who maybe didn't have the motivation or desire to go to college to actually have something to look forward to for that particular group of people. So it creates a lot of opportunities for these students, which I'll dive into a little bit later. The really big one on this is inclusion. So inclusion is something that I'm really passionate about because it's something that I struggled with and why I ended up in esports in the first place. So to give you a background, I grew up in the military. We moved around every couple of years all across the world. And my dad retired when I was in middle school going into high school. And he ended up buying a farm in the middle of Iowa. And I was in a class with 50 people who had all grown up together since preschool. And I was this outsider. And so for a long time, pretty much all of high school, I was bouncing around, trying out different sports, different friend groups, just trying to see where I fit in. And ultimately, I never found that until I went to college and I joined my college esports program. That was the first time I found like-minded individuals where I could really call them, call it a home and get to fit in. And that's why I fell in love with esports. And so what we're doing by adding this into high school is reaching students that we're not currently reaching with the athletic structure put in place. What we see is 78 to 86% of students who join high school esports programs were not involved with anything else at their school. So you're not adding these programs and it's just overlapping and allowing more kids to play video games who are already on the football team or basketball team or whatever. You're reaching kids that no one is contacting right now. No one's keeping engaged. No one is helping these kids. And so what do? They go home, they play video games online with their friends, and they don't really get much out of it. So that's a really big problem that we're trying to fix. The other really big one is obviously academics, and this ties along with motivation. So by adding esports, what we're doing is giving these kids something that they can look forward to and something that they're really excited about. And what that motivation does is it raises attendance and it raises GPA. And particularly when you tie that into a GPA requirement for the club, which we see a lot of schools do, which means, hey, if you want to play on our varsity team, you need to keep a 2.5, a 3.0, whatever your school wants to say, GPA to compete. And so then what you see is these kids now have a reason to turn in their homework, a reason to get good grades. Most of the time, it's not because they're not capable of getting good grades. It's because they just don't understand why it matters. And so esports can give them that why and that motivation to really go after it. And what you'll notice is on this slide, nowhere does it say video games or playing more video games, because that's not what we're talking about. When you're adding esports into high schools and higher ed everywhere, it's not about playing more video games. The kids already play the video games. 96% of high schoolers play video games. They're going home and playing it. What we're doing is meeting them where they're at, finding the activity that they're actually passionate about, and structuring it with a sponsor, teacher, educator, someone to help guide these kids. That's all we're doing. It's not just telling them to play more video games. It's actually the opposite. And so that ties right into the next slide if you want to move along, which is the benefit to these kids. Why adding these programs benefits these high schoolers. So I've seen a unique angle from this, and I know Scott's going to dive into it deeper because I recruited kids to college. I ran a college program. I would recruit high schoolers into my college esports program. And the kids I recruited either had sports backgrounds, esports backgrounds, or no background. And now what we saw was the kids that we recruited in with the background in athletics or esports, they were a lot more structured. They understood what a coach was, how to operate, how to be timely, some very basic life skills that the kids that weren't currently involved in anything didn't have. I had kids I had to schedule and sign up appointments for. I had to walk them to meetings. I had to walk them online on how to sign up for the ACT, like very basic things these kids didn't really have. And a lot of that's contributed to not having a leader or a leadership role in high school. So what esports does is allows these students to build these skills. It's the first time they're put on a team. They have to act as a leader. They have to work together to achieve a common goal. They have to take criticism and collaboration within whoever's coaching them, their teammates. They have to, get that structure for the first time. And also, one of the largest reasons a team competes well versus a team that doesn't is communication. How well in the moment, under pressure, you're able to communicate your thoughts to your teammates is a very, very big indicator of who's going to be a strong player in esports, but that also just mimics in real life. The better you can articulate what's going on, and especially under pressure, the better you're going to be suited for the real world. And so esports provides those opportunities for player development that they're not currently getting by going home and just playing video games. The final piece of this is really the code of conduct piece. So understanding that one of the bigger problems in the video game market right now is toxicity and cyberbullying. And one of the overarching theories as to why this is because there's never been a structure put in place for these kids to learn how to behave. They're just thrown onto video games, thrown a headset, and then the parents, leave them alone, or maybe they do it outside of that or whatever. And they were never really taught how to act. So then it just developed over years of this really toxic behavior. And so what we can do by adding high school and middle school esports into the school district is catch these kids early in their gaming career and teach them how to behave, what's appropriate, how you're supposed to be acting. That's another big issue even at the college level. We had to put in some really crazy rules around cursing and things that regular athletes we don't have to deal with, but with our kids we do, because they never were taught this code of conduct. So that's a really big reason why esports matters at the K-12 level. If you want to hop to the next slide, I'm just going to go over career advantages real quick of what is on the other end. So let's say you open up a high school esports program and you get kids involved, and now what can they do with that experience? Well, the big one is obviously going professional. Everyone talks about that. That's what makes the news. There's plenty of kids making millions of dollars playing video games, but the honest truth behind that is it's statistically about twice as hard to get drafted to a professional team in esports than it is as a professional athlete. So it's not a very likely outcome. It's certainly possible, and I would never tell you to smash a kid's dream. If that's their dream, go for it. But that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about opening up opportunities. What we're talking about is the industry around it. So a bunch of careers are listed off underneath there. Shoutcasting and coaching are two that are directly tied to high school and college esports involvement. Those are jobs that you have to just build up over time, learning the games, learning how to interact, being on camera. Those are very, very directly correlated to their involvement in esports. The rest of them are in a combination of understanding this kid's passion, allowing them to pursue it, while also going on to get a higher education and learning in the field that they want. So marketing, video production, I mean, all of the different things, accounting, every single professional esports team requires the same jobs that you see in every other industry. The difference is when you tie it in with esports, it's actually a career that these kids are excited about and are willing to put themselves out there for, which is what's really, really exciting. And these job opportunities are becoming more and more every single year. Right now, it's about, for every professional player, there's 10 jobs that are created around that player to support them and allow the industry to succeed, which is really, really cool. And with that, I think I'm good to go. And Tanner, you can take it back over.
Awesome. Thank you, Connor. And then before I turn it over to Scott, I wanted to add a few things. So with this industry that's booming, there's so many companies as well that have roles. Like Connor, for example, has found an awesome job that doesn't tie directly to an esports team. He has that as well, but there's a lot of companies that are starting to become part of this industry that having a background in esports helps. So the opportunities are really endless. And then also I wanted to add with the sense of pride for a school. So when you have a football team that does really well, when you win state, that brings a sense of pride to your school. The community jumps on it, the students jump on it. And as esports grows, we're going to start seeing that. There's some events on ESPN that are like more viewed than the NBA playoffs, than NFL playoffs. Connor probably knows more statistics on the viewership of some of these tournaments, but it's insane. And your community really can rally around this as esports does start to grow. And as our younger generation starts to grow up, they'll want to rally behind the esports. So I just wanted to add that in there. Connor, do you want to put your 2 cents into that?
No, I think that's a completely valid point. For the audience that doesn't know, and I know a lot of you are new to esports, last year, the only event that was viewed more than the League of Legends Championship, which is an esports title, was the Super Bowl. Every single other event was beat out by an esports event in viewership. NBA, NHL. In fact, the NHL and NBA were beat out with like multiple esports titles. So the viewership is absolutely incredible. The market, I think, has over doubled the expected growth for this year because of COVID. It's one of the few sports that was still able to not only grow or continue, but grow and thrive through this. And as we head into what's going to become the new future after, post-COVID and all the things that were going on, it's why a lot of schools are investing in right now, because it's one of the few things that wasn't harmed by this. Yes, we want to play in person. Spectator is good. We want these kids playing together. But we can adapt. The industry is way more flexible on what's going on, and we can play from home. We can, in fact, you're seeing a lot of traditional athletes. My time at the VEF, we were approached by almost every single high school league for sports, soccer, basketball, football, about, hey, how do we engage our audience with esports? Can we have them playing online and communicating? Because it's going to be the future of how we communicate and keep up with these kids.
Exactly. And that was pretty eye-opening to me when I realized the viewership behind esports, because you think football, soccer, basketball, baseball are like the dominant viewership sports, when in reality, esports is starting to take over. So I wanted to add that in there, but now I want to turn the time over to Scott.
We have a poll question leading into mine. Just wanted to.
Yes, thank you. Did I skip that? Let's see. Let's go. Yeah, here we go. Thanks for that, Scott. I got so hyped on esports that I went right over it. Okay, so this poll question, is how concerned are you about violence in video games? And this is a lot of, I wouldn't say like controversial, or maybe it is controversial, but a lot of people in education have some assumptions on this. So I wanted to gauge where our audience is, and so I'll send this out. And last time we had about 70%. So let's see if we have one more come through. Okay, I'll go ahead and there we go. So it looks like it's pretty spread apart, but there is some extremely concerned and some that are not at all. So I wanted to, I'll share this so our audience can see it. And then Connor, could you touch on this briefly?
Yeah, so this is a topic I really love talking about because I think there's just a lot of misinformation and or just general concern, which is totally fair. So this is something that I want to introduce into this, and I really like. So first, I just want to go over some of the research that's been done, and then I'll dive into a little more how it applies to K-12. So one of the really cool studies that was done was actually done by Oxford University. They did one of the, actually I think the largest overall research into this. They studied 2,000 14 and 15-year-olds with all varying levels of violent video game, or how much time they're allowed to play violent video games every single day. And what they found at their conclusion was that there was no relation between how much time that kid played violent video games and any aggressive behavior. And in fact, in their conclusion, the only thing that they could find that was consistent among the teens who showed violent behavior was family background and other environmental factors, which means that overwhelmingly, if not 100% of the time, how that kid is raised means everything and not how much time he's spent playing that video game. That was also backed up by a research study done by the Entertainment Software Association, who came to the same conclusion. And the APA has done 2 studies now, both of which determine that there is no correlation between the amount of time played violent video games and aggressive behavior in teenagers. So that's some larger scale research that we've done. Ultimately, what I like to tell people, and if you're really worried about it, or if your school is worried about it, is through a league like High School Esports League, which I hope you all are considering, you have total control over what games they play. At the middle school level, in the Middle School Esports League, there is no violent video games. It's all, or if it is, it's fantasy violence. It's all E-rated games. Once you go into the high school level, you have the opportunity to play teen and mature games because those are considered the largest esports titles. But if it's a huge concern, or if you just want to see how it weighs out, you have the option to say no. You have the option to just compete in the E-games, to get it into your school, to get people acting, and or for you guys to take time to do your own research. But I hope that research presented maybe hopes to change your mind around violence in video games, because ultimately it comes up to how that kid is raised.
Exactly. And I think that's an important note, is that you do have the flexibility, you do have the option. There's so many esports titles, and a lot of them are popular, but instead of crossing off all violent video games, it's important to know that there is some research done that shows it doesn't lead directly to anger or violence. But yeah, so with that being said, I'm going to now officially turn the time over to Scott. Before it was a little bit of a psych, but this time I'm gonna turn it over to Scott.
Hey, no problem. So you might look at Spectrum Industries and say, why is Spectrum interested? Why is Spectrum trying to assist with some of the awareness or advocacy? And for me, it's a little bit of a personal story, and a little bit of a kind of a broader network or geographic impact. And it really centered around several years ago, being brought kind of into the loop on the growth within esports, the excitement within esports, and seeing that really start to pick up as a trend. But at the same time, as an organization, Spectrum was facing a shortage of skilled workers. So something that has been broadly known as kind of a skills gap. So the employees that were available maybe weren't good fits for the positions that you had. And as I started to immerse myself and others within the organization immerse themselves into esports, just fell in love with the category. And what you see overall, and Tanner, if you want to jump into the next slide, what you see overall is a huge impact for the employers on this. There's been a lot of talk about the benefit for the students, but when you look at where those students are going to go, they can fill a critical role within organizations. And what we ran into prior to esports was a shortage of people who could work within teams. Strategic planning, awareness and understanding was really limited. Really struggling in group settings and fitting into a group, and just overall having those skills that can move from a participant into a leader role were really lacking. And what we saw is most of those employees who came in and that was their background and that was how they fit into an organization, it didn't last. So you run into these excessive costs around employee development and employee engagement. But when you look at esports, and as an employer, I look at this, and as I talk to administrators across the country, what I want to get across is when students are engaged on esports, and it was great that Connor brought up the 76 to 84% of participants weren't in other student organizations or athletics programs. Those programs are invaluable because you do learn to work within a team. You learn to face adversity. You learn to get knocked down and get back up midstream. And that happens every day to every one of us in the business world or in, an institution. And you have to be able to adjust and overcome. And with esports, you find those students have to do that. If they can't do that, they can't be successful and those teams can't be successful. So I love the programs that esports is bringing forward. Some of the titles in particular, and it's interesting before we jump into this, some of the titles work better than others too. So you see a broader interaction and a broader involvement and more teamwork. And when you were talking about violence, Overwatch is one of them that gets brought up many times regarding some of the violence that the game itself has. But it's also one of the best games as far as building a good cohesive unit, building skills within each competitor and allowing those students to excel as a team as a result. And as an employer, that's what I want. I don't want to focus on the violence. I want to focus on the outcome that's coming and the performance level of each one of those students. So that's really where our passion and our focus has been in the esports category. So we look at this as our involvement here is going to be around advocacy, long-term advocacy. So we can see those students enter in at the middle school level, move on to the high school, ideally into a collegiate program. And there's so many opportunities to participate, whether it's the marketing side of things, whether it's the broadcasting or something like fundraising. So if you're in high school, you might need to look at this as a student group to start. How are you going to get the funds to do this? And fundraising is going to be a skill that's going to last really an entire career for some of these students as they transition. So it's a fantastic thing. And for us, this is something that we're going to be focused on, and you're hopefully going to be seeing, more of Spectrum in these types of panels and these types of programs as we roll forward. That being said, if you move on to the next slide, Micro K-12 and Spectrum have a long background together. So we've worked together on the education technology side of things, working on integrated programs, bringing devices into the classroom and putting them into students' hands, whether it's via a full-size computer in a computer lab or engineering lab, or whether it's into an esports environment. So this is a logical step for Spectrum. We have products that will actually serve multiple areas within this. So when you take a look at that box in the pink, it's really around some of the furnishings that can be flexible, can be reconfigurable, but most importantly, can be ergonomic. So you have comfort both in height adjustment and also the adjustment of the work surface from an angle standpoint. So you have good ergonomics moving to the keyboard and mouse as the students are playing. But it also has just phenomenal, really industry-leading cable management. So we want to protect those devices that your students have to make sure are connected and are performing at their fullest. You can't really accept any sort of a hiccup. You can't accept a mouse or a keyboard coming or becoming disconnected, or a monitor for that matter. But then you have items like seating. So whether it's a competitive chair or whether it's some of the reconfigurable social distancing supporting console gaming or lounge type furniture that you see in the yellow box, it can really be an invaluable way to build more awareness. But another aspect is to really build a home base for those students, so they have an area that they can call home. They have an area that they can really align to, sort of like a basketball player would to the basketball court. It's something that they can really take pride in. And then as we look at those individual careers, and broadcasting and shoutcasting was brought up earlier, on the far right, you're going to see a shoutcasting station. So whether it's individual shoutcasters or whether it's a team approach where you've got 2 or 3, Spectrum's developed hand in hand with a number of folks in the industry, a shoutcasting solution. So when you take a look at that, while we do have product, and I don't want to discount that because Micro K-12, you've been a fantastic partner of ours, it's really important that you just consider everything that goes into that environment, and you look to build out a solution that really supports a program first and foremost. And if that means you're using or repurposing tables, fantastic. We want to make sure you get started. To help with that, Spectrum has a planning program. So on the far left, you're going to see a planning guide or a rendering. We're happy to assist. So engage with your Micro K-12 salesperson, engage with Spectrum's territory manager, Nick Young. We're happy to assist, ensure that you have everything covered. If it leads to something, bigger and broader, we're happy to discuss that. But really, we want to help make sure that you're doing things right first and foremost. So if you want to take it from there, Tanner.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Scott. And I can stand by the quality and function of Spectrum Furniture. Like you said, Micro K-12 has been working with Spectrum for a long while, so we do stand by that. So now we're going to go on to our third and final poll question. Let's launch it. So it says, how do you think the cost of a high school esports team compares to a traditional high school sports team? Awesome. Just share the results. So 2 people thought it was more expensive per student, 7 people thought it was less expensive per student, and 4% or 4 people said about the same. Interesting. So I'm going to open this up. Connor has some data on this that I think is important to know. So Connor, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, I can talk about it. It's cool that pretty much everyone, or the right answer is less expensive per student. So a lot of people guessed that correctly. To throw out some numbers, the average household in America will spend up to $680 per student athlete in high school to allow them to compete and have equipment and do all those sorts of things. A high school will invest about $500 per semester into every kid that competes on their football program. That includes equipment costs and operation and all of that stuff. Esports has historically been about half of that. So it's about half expensive as running a traditional sport. And that's including if every single kid in your program gets their own equipment. So if we invest about $2,000 into every kid that joins into that program, that equipment lasts them all 4 years of high school. That's his own desk, his own computer, all of his own stuff. You're talking a year pass for league fees is $60 to $90. You're maxing out at like $290, and per semester that's less than $200 per kid to be able to compete in national tournaments and have his own equipment. And that's at the high end. Most schools don't give every kid their own equipment. They set up a computer lab and they share equipment. So it's significantly less expensive of an investment than a traditional athletic structure. And so my question would then be to the schools, if you're willing to invest that kind of money into giving one student that athletic experience and the sense of belonging and teamwork, why wouldn't you be willing to spend less than half that money to give that same opportunity to a kid interested in esports?
Awesome. Thank you for that, Connor. So moving on, Micro K-12, I just want to put a quick general view of what we do here for esports. So we do planning, consulting, similar to what Scott does. When you have any questions on how to get started. Just from phase one, we've helped some schools know the next steps. We also obviously do our hardware. So any needs you would have for your esports program, we work with Spectrum for furniture, for hardware. We work with all the main manufacturers you can think of in esports: HP, Lenovo, Acer, whatever it may be, Dell. So we've worked with all those manufacturers for over 30 years, and we have good relationships with them, so we can get you fitted with whatever it may be. Engraving of these systems, we offer that as well. So when you do realize that you need an esports team, which is hopefully yesterday, then reach out and we can help you out with that. So moving on now, we are going to get into the giveaway. Hopefully you are all excited about this. So how we want to do it, we're going to have Scott give a background or an introduction on the giveaway specifically, but then we're going to have Connor announce it. And since we've been talking about shoutcasting, just a brief or a definition of shoutcasting, just think of it as like a commentator, but it makes esports intense. And so Connor is going to give us his best showing of a shoutcaster.
This is news to me.
Yep, I'm just kidding, but we won't put him through that. But I just wanted to give a brief definition of what shoutcasting is, because I know you've heard that in the webinar. But like I said, it usually does get intense. So if you haven't seen esports live, you should watch it just for that fact. But I'll turn the time over to Scott.
And I'd say on shoutcasting, I love, when you see a soccer goal or movement in front of a net in soccer, the excitement of the announcers. Imagine that for a half an hour straight.
Exactly.
That's what shoutcasting is. So on the chair. So it's a little bit more than just a chair. We're going to provide the winner of this, and we'll allow you to pick your own accent colors, but it's going to be ergonomics. So you're going to have a nice lean back ability, be able to get comfortable. Obviously going to be height adjustable, some arms that are also going to be adjustable. We're pretty excited about this. So I believe that Jackson has probably provided Connor with this, but this is going to be one of our first quality products that you're going to get. We will email the winner, correct, Tanner? And we'll get the address from you. But Connor, are you ready?
I am. I don't know if I need to like prepare a radio voice or something. And the winner of the gaming chair goes to Glenn Green. Congrats, Glenn. You'll get an email from them on how to proceed. How was that? Was that all right? I don't have an announcer voice.
There we go,
fantastic.
Connor. And then Glenn, I can get in touch with you on the winner, or I'll email you with the details and how we can move forward on getting you your gaming chair. So we'll make that a smooth process and work with Scott on that. Congrats, Glenn. So moving on, we're going to open it up to the live Q&A. And if you've put some questions in the chat that weren't answered, feel free to put them in the Q&A section. Sorry, I just read Connor and said that. But feel free to put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll answer as much as we can. We have about 10 minutes on this, so hopefully we can get to as many. And we want to encourage the questions. So if you have literally any questions, there's no dumb questions, feel free to put them in there.
I thought I saw one come in regarding the game titles.
Yeah, feel free to expound on Connor or Scott, whoever wants to take that.
We got a question. I'll answer this, and then I can dive into game titles. So what would you say is the minimum size team to get started? That's a really great question. The first thing you're going to want to figure out when you're starting a team or a club is really gauging what games your student body is interested in. I would say typically, so the largest team game is Overwatch with 6 people on each team. You can start a club with games that are just played solo, and you could have as little as 3, 4, 5 people in the program. I think 6 to 10 is a healthy number to get started. as far as putting together a full team game and also having the environment where kids are getting to meet other kids and get to, like we said, feel that sense of inclusion and belonging. I think pretty much any student body in this country, if you email every single person or however you contact your students, a poll of not do you play video games, but what video games do you play, you're going to get a lot of answers. You're going to get a lot of them to respond, which will give you a good idea of what games to start with. And then when you announce, hey, do you guys want to compete for our team for scholarships? You're going to be hard to find a high school in America that can't find 10 kids that are really interested in it. There is still some social stigma that we come over. Some schools are better than others. For the most part, gaming's kind of cool now. We've had some really good role models like Booga and people on TV that have set the way to show that like this can be really cool, but there can still be some social stigmas, just like robotics or anything that's not traditionally athletic within students. So that's where the better job you can do in prepping your student body on how cool this is, and particularly buying equipment. That's one of the coolest ways to show kids this is like a fun thing, is by actually having equipment they can come play in. But that was a long-winded answer, but yeah, I would say around 6 to 10 is a good number, but you can start with 3, 4, 5. Feel free to jump in, Scott or Tanner, while I'm talking too.
Yeah, and I think the title selection, I think, plays into those numbers as well. So if you're looking at whether it's, you mentioned single player, so it could be something like FIFA or Madden, and built around that from a console standpoint. So you don't even need the same level of equipment purchases. Just needed to make sure I wasn't on mute here. But then you take a look at the other titles. So one of the more popular ones that we see across the country, Rocket League. Very, very simple title. It's essentially, as a lot of people have said, it's soccer with cars. But for the people who are good at it, it requires a fantastic team of 3, and there could be teams of 2. But League of Legends, another really, really well-known title within the education community. That's 5v5, so you would have a varsity team of 5. Overwatch with 6, Super Smash Brothers, Hearthstone, Fortnite. There's a number of them, and I think Smite. So you're seeing some of these other titles just be tremendously popular as well. But at the top level, you're seeing League of Legends, Rocket League, Overwatch, and I'd say Super Smash Brothers and Hearthstone probably being the most popular 5. Are there any other ones that you'd like to throw out there that could potentially be in that group, Connor?
I think that's a good example. I dropped a link to High School Esports League's website with how to start a team, but on that website, there's also a list of all of the games that they offer or play. There's quite a few of them. You're just going to have to kind of search through and or include a lot of them and see what your student body is going to want to play. So I dropped that link on how you get started. So really the first steps for getting started in high school and starting up a club is you need to find a sponsor, a teacher, someone at your school that's going to take accountability for the club. And then they can set up a one-on-one call with HSEL and reach out and establish their club. That's first steps. Very easy. It's free to have that conversation and just get your club started. And once you're up and running, they'll send you more information on how the tournament platform works. You'll typically pay, you can either pay per student, per league that they want to sign up for, or depending on how big your school is, you can pay a one-time fee for your school to be able to register as many kids as they want and as many tournaments as they want. So that's kind of how the structure of the league works. Looks like we have a question. We're a pretty small school, about 250 kids with space issues right now due to construction. So that is a manageable number. Yeah, awesome. Absolutely. And the big thing to note about all this is obviously I'm a big component of the spectator component and being in person, but especially through HSCL, you can play all of these games online or at home. So if your club needs to get started by allowing these kids to go home after school and just hop online together, you can get it started that way. Ultimately, you're going to want to work towards an in-person event or in-person practices and at least meetings once a week with the guys to build that teamwork in person. But the other thing is access, right? A lot of students might not have access, especially if you're in lower income areas, if you're more urban. Some students just might not have access, where if you get them started at the school level, you can help with that too.
Awesome. So then the next question we have here is, what is the typical esports season? Is it similar to a football or basketball season?
So esports runs all year long. So with HSEL, you have what's called a fall and spring major. So each semester you're going to have a major event. That's where they can win. I think this year they're doing $1,000 in scholarships to all the winning players. We just gave away $50,000 in scholarships to students that graduated this year. So those are the big ones, the fall and spring major, and you can sign up for any of the games that they offer for those seasons. And then they also have a summer and winter league that you're open to compete in. I'm not sure. I just started with the team, so I don't know exactly the difference, other than I think the trophies and awards are a little bit smaller or vary in those ones. But the main two leagues are fall and spring. It runs all year.
Perfect. Well, unless we have any last minute questions come in, yeah, let's wrap up the Q&A. Thank you to everyone who participated. Hopefully we were able to answer your questions right. So now I'm going to turn the time over to Scott, and this kind of runs on how to start a team. This should be a good resource. So here's Scott.
Just to basically further the advocacy that we're interested in and really helping these students gain these job skills and future skills. We built out a guidebook. So currently in the Rev 2, it's 24 pages. About half of that is going to be industry connections. So it's going to be introduction to institutions or organizations that are currently involved in esports, as well as links to some of their valuable content. So we try to describe some of that. In addition, we do kind of walk through some of the basics as far as, what is important when you're starting up a program. Why is it important to have a leader within the program? What are some of the concerns that are addressed? What are those titles? What are the curriculum connections and the career opportunities? So everybody on the panel here, everybody on the session is free to download it. So there's a link included. And I believe the folks at Micro K-12 are even going to send out a link as a follow-up. So keep an eye out for that. We do have a third revision in process right now. So we'll be pulling in some content from Amon Green at Lakeland University, a longtime NFL player who's also been involved with esports, as well as some coaches and program directors at the higher ed level and K-12 level. So you'll see some showcases on some programs as well. So we're excited about Rev 3 coming before too long.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll send that in the follow-up email as this webinar wraps up, along with the recording. So if you weren't able to watch it live, you'll have this content, but you'll also be able to send this video to your admin to help them get on board with esports. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Connor.
Yeah, thanks everyone so much for sticking with us this whole time. It's been a lot of fun. My last little plug is I am the main contributor to the Esports Education Network. This is a newer network, but we have some really cool resources that are launched. So we do have a live free What is Esports course just to get anyone started on what esports actually is. And then we have 3 really exciting courses rolling out over the next 30 days. So we have a free course on how to start a club. So that question we got, we'll actually have an in-depth, about 45-minute course on exactly how you can get started and more in-depth information that I can't answer right now. We also have a free course on why high school esports matters that you can send to any parents, teachers, admins that don't quite get it. It's going to help share, why it's important. And then we have a course coming out that is a certification for anyone that wants to sponsor a club in HSEL. I believe we're good to go where that's going to be free for anyone that registers with HSEL. Otherwise, it counts as professional development for any teachers that need professional development hours. That is going to walk you through exactly how to manage and operate a club at the K-12 level. So those are all rolling out on the Esports Education Network over the next month, which is really, really exciting. And I hope you guys maybe check them out or enjoy.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Connor. And thank you, Scott, for coming to this webinar and providing the value that you guys have to our viewers. And thank you, lastly, to all of our viewers who are here or who will be watching later for the time. Hopefully you were able to learn something. And when you are ready to make the steps forward with esports, feel free to reach out to me. I can help with any of the process. This is what I do. This is what I love. So yeah, Thank you so much for attending. And hopefully we will see you all at our next webinar, whenever that will be. We'll make sure you know. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.